I'm up on Castle Hill. I haven't taken any videos because I took a tour, and I'm going to come back either tomorrow if it's halfway nice, or when I come back from Slovakia and do the tour all over again, so I'll deal with those elements then. I think for today what I'm going to do for the fun is go over and look at that church, and then go to the left, cross over that bridge, come down along the riverside there in front of the Parliament, and work my way back through the streets over to what I think is Saint Stephen's Basilica that you can see in the distance, and then back to the hostel. I'm leaving the castle compound now, and I'll wander on the back streets. Here, a very lovely shot. Looks like part of a church. Yeah. That looks like the top of the Parliament. The other church with the two green spires, and then way in the distance, one or two more churches. I'm not sure if this is a church or a school. Don't think it's a church, although there's some elements that remind me of one. Gymnasium, so I think that means school. And all around me are kids doing things and music, like being practiced playing in buildings. This looks like at one time this might have been an interesting old square or intersection. Coyote coffee shop, know what that means here. The nice thing about walking in Budapest or any other Western European city is it simply looks old, not shattered, tattered, and unrestored. Looking back from where I came on this intersection, again a couple of three older buildings. Interesting church towers. Each tower apparently has clocks on all four sides. I don't know if this is an earlier picture of the outside of this building, but on the inside it looks like a very old market that was restored, an old Victorian style. We're out of the rain, that second church we saw to the left. With some interesting detail up there, I think. Down there, the first bridge is the chain bridge. It was the first bridge, permanent bridge, to join Pest, which is on the left side, with Buda, which is on the right side, and another church we can see in the distance. Can't see where the castle is, it's up behind these two churches we've just visited. Here I pan across the legislative building. It's apparently the third largest in Europe, after the first one, which I don't remember, and the second one, which was that communist looking, somewhat grotesque Romanian parliamentary building in Bucharest. We'll get a little closer to this. pretty, particularly when you look at the elements of it. Then if we pan to the side, now that bridge that you see beyond the chain bridge, and you'll see later on why it's called the chain bridge, was the first modern bridge built in Budapest. We're going to walk up to this other bridge and cross over. Some of the boats along here, particularly this giant one, or looks giant compared to the others, and there are several along the river that you can see from up above, will cruise up to Vienna. There aren't very many, if any, memorable buildings along this side of the river. These may be Austro-Hungarian. This one being the most interesting, and it may be relatively new, at least the surface embellishments of it. Most notably these statues and faux columns. There's kind of a strip park that goes down a few blocks, I think. But I noticed some architecture over here which kind of brought me over just to see it. And all these buildings may somehow be associated with that church whose steeple we see in the back. We'll go around to the side and see if we can get a better look at that. I'm down at an old kind of little square that's crisscrossed right now by, I think, trolley tracks or tram tracks. Looks like it's in the state of, I think, restoration of some sort. But I just like the colors. A little bit of quaint park art. I don't know what he's holding in his hand. I'm guessing this is the steeple of a church. What else could it be? And that is that peak. But it looks more like a administrative building than anything else. Certainly not a church. Take a little bit closer look at it. And even closer look at it with our 200 digital. You wonder what the artist's thoughts are when much of what they produce on things this high up and far away never really gets seen as well as you and I are seeing. And it's interesting that from here we have a nice view of the bridge. So we'll take a closer look at its underpinnings. We were up on top here a little bit earlier on Castle Hill. Now I'll just do a slow pan across the river. That, of course, is Buda, the town of Buda, if you will, or the side of Buda now that Budapest is one. And there the chain bridge, the Parliament, and just to the left of the Parliament you can see poking up, and we'll focus in tighter, the Basilica of St. Stephen. They have big trams, that long yellow thing you see. Here comes another one. And they kind of startle you when you first when they come across the bridge, because it makes a rattling sound and the whole bridge vibrates. which I'll explore sometime later. Apparently not the kind of place to hang out. We'll walk in front of the parliament, well, to the left. Whether it's the front or the back, I don't know. This memorial may be being restored. Some robust buildings seem to surround this courtyard, if you will, of the Parliament building. And this has beauty to it instead of that monstrosity in Bucharest. When it's completed, this monument to Kosice, this is what it will look like. Probably notable figures that I don't recognize, of course, from Hungarian history. It's an impressive building. I don't know what it is yet, and maybe I'll figure it out before I leave. Just start on the right upper portion and take a look at the statuary and so forth. It's probably an important moment in the history of Hungary. Maybe the modern day equivalent of an old day sculpture. That a pretty building? And no, I don't know what it is. There's an interesting piece of park art. Whether it represents an actual individual or not, I don't know. I don't think so. Just take a closer look. Somehow it caught my attention for a little bit of the detail up there. Well, you can walk across it if you want, but I wonder what the significance is of the upturned walkway down the right side and the left side. Here we're at a lovely, what seems to be a circular park, as well as a roundabout, with some old, impressive looking buildings surrounding it. And it's about a block away from the parliamentary building, which is just down that street and to the left. This building is interesting. Look at the rope hanging down there, and I'll get up closer to it. Maybe it's part of that coat of arms. It has too much the look of nautical to be something less than very pertinent to that. Notice the crest. And up on top, am I correct? We're looking at the bow or the prow of a boat. A couple of paddles hanging down on either side. I looked at the statue and I said, God, it looks like Ronald Reagan. Americans can say all they want about what their country has or hasn't done, so can the rest of the world. The irony is we've done enough that many countries show tribute. Many statues that you see have bronze, shiny portions where people have shook them or touched them for luck or whatever. I don't normally do that since I don't believe in that sort of thing. But this was one statue in one hand I was proud to shake. Continuation of that circular portion of the park with this long park-like strip with plenty of places to sit under the trees and relax. An impressive looking building, at least on the bottom. The upper portion, the tower-like structures look like they've been abandoned and are just being weathered away. This is a statue to apparently Harry Hill Randholtz. 1919. I simply carried out the instructions of my government as I understood them as an officer and a gentleman of the United States Army. Huh. Didn't know there was such a man. What did he mean he simply did? Is that a self-deprecating response to his heroism? There's a pretty little water feature in there, some kind of a monument being built. Looking back down the park. Behind me is St. Stephen's Basilica where we started. Here an old building continuing its erosion and dark coloring. This probably was an elegant street at one time. It still is, but not in that same vein. This man was a policeman apparently at the turn of the 19th century who was known for being a friendly policeman, but also known for having had 200 relationships with women. And apparently what he would do is sit in a cafe nearby and tweak his mustache, and that would be a just really big. It's a Catholic church. In the frieze, the center character is Mary, the Virgin. And to her left is St. Stephen, who was made a saint by the Catholic Church. When he died, he left no heirs, and so he left symbolically left everything to Mary. But when they were rebuilding the church at some point in time, they exhumed his body and discovered that all that was left was bones except for one hand, which somehow had been preserved. And so they removed that hand, and it resides in this church. And all the rest of the bones, apparently, in various proportions, are spread elsewhere throughout Hungary as relics. You got to hand it to the Catholic Church for the ability to create religious relics out of the macabre, even to the point of creating phony relics and phony martyrs and saints out of corpses. It's neat how they've taken just a little vacant corner in the middle of a bunch of streets and converted it into a kids' park, or a park for kids as well as others, but with that beautiful backdrop on what otherwise would be an ugly bare wall. This neighborhood, apparently called Kiskirálylány, that's my name for it, no way is it pronounced that way, has embellished itself with these lights as part of the effort to spruce up this street and give it a little bit more class and marketing pizzazz, no doubt. Just an example of a society that's fairly financially strong and developing stronger. This is all just part of the modernization, and just some more examples of it with this light post with a flower basin in it. as well as these benches. Of course, those curlicues are bike racks. I'm guessing that this is a post office box. Something we used to have in the United States. A pretty water feature that is part of the wall for this little kids park behind it. Okay, where we are now is Elizabeth Park. Elizabeth was the Queen of Austria, but she was loved by the people here in Hungary because she was beautiful, kind to the people, whatever it is that makes a monarch, a person who is enjoyed by the others, by the peeps. We've just come from St. Stephen's Basilica. After this, we'll negotiate our way down to the river and then go up river just a short ways till we get to the chain bridge, which should be that first bridge. Now here's an interesting example of how a society maintains what it builds as opposed to the build and forget mindset. Before they will bring heavy equipment in here which could damage the surface of this pedestrian walk, they bring in these aluminum walks, and that provides a platform for all that heavy equipment to work on so they don't destroy what they've already created. This is a strong advancement if you'll look through the subtlety of it from what most second and third world nations do. This park has a couple of interesting attributes. One is it's a place where apparently the younger people come to start their night of drinking. They'll sit on the lawn here when it's nicer and have wine and a beer. And even though it's against the law to drink in public, apparently, in Budapest, this is one place that has immunity from the police. They ignore this and let that tradition continue. And then after the kids have gotten their appropriate buzz, off they go to the bars. This is something we've seen all over the world where lovers put their locks to symbolize their eternal love for each other, and then they theoretically throw the key into the river nearby, I think the Danube, as an act of finality. And somewhere on this side, I think Steve thought he saw a lock that was a combination lock, and he quipped, "What does it say when someone uses a combination lock?" And I quipped back, "Prudence." What I think would be an interesting tradition is if they put locks on here and each of them held on to the key, and then when they didn't want the relationship to continue, one of them removed the lock. And all you had to do was occasionally check up on this rack to see if, in fact, your love affair wasn't. This fountain is a tribute to the rivers in the area, of which there are 3. And that's what these 3 statues here symbolize. I would imagine that that's Neptune. It's interesting to look at the faces, this one on the left in particular. There's a certain calm confidence. My sense is that each of these statues reflects a contentment, a nourishment, if you will, the nurturing of women. Here, this one contemplates a pile of fishes in her lap, perhaps thinking about those humans who will be succored by that. It's a heavy piece of equipment, and there are 2 big heavy pieces. I wonder what they're actually going to put in here. Here, as we leave the park, a statue of a shepherd comforting his sheep. And behind us, another square and parklet, and a very pretty building. I'm hoping that this is an older building refurbished, because it's very pretty in an Art Deco way. I'm off the path that we took on the tour yesterday, but I think I can get myself back onto it as I wander down further this pedestrianized street, a mix of older buildings and new facades. All over town are these water-featured drinking fountains. Here we're at a large square that apparently is where oftentimes celebrations throughout the year are held, a Christmas book fair, as well as throughout the year there are various events. This reminds me of an Apple store, but it's not. Again, everywhere you look, and this area is nicely refurbished. Continue down here towards the river. Here at River's Edge, this pretty little circular park with a little statue in center of a water feature. And it also, as I pan about, gives us our first view of Capitol Hill, or Castle Hill, excuse me, which we'll visit shortly. And up there, since we're here, on top of the hill, and I'll pan up, you can see it's called the Gellert Freedom or Liberty Monument. It was either put up or left up by the communists to signify their and memorialize their capturing of Budapest from the Nazis. And then when the Nazis were finally thrown out, the Budapestians left it here as a monument of their freedom. All the rest of the monuments have been taken from the city and put in a special museum of communist monumental detritus. Here a statue of the Bard in a somewhat curious position, and perhaps this reflects somehow a cultural nature of that building, but I don't think so. And that bridge was the first bridge of modern design constructed between the two cities, Buda and Pest. We're now in Pest. We'll cross over to Buda, and of course they're combined. Here's some cute park art. I don't know what this pretty older building is that backdrops the little statue in this water feature, but here a brass three-dimensional map, if you will, of the Buda side. Right is the chain bridge we'll cross in a few minutes, and of course there's Castle Hill. This is actually a statue of a little girl who is dressed like a princess, and I forget the story on this. I'd have to look it up. A guide pointed out that, once again, the shiny parts are parts people touch for good luck, but be careful, it is a child. Here's a typical seam in the rails of a railroad train. This happens to be a trolley, but they're welded together and then filed down, if you will, to make them smooth so you don't hear that clickety-clack, except still in Eastern Europe, where you oftentimes do hear that clickety-clack, because they haven't got the time or the money to spend that kind of a nicety yet. This memorial to the Hungarian seamen who have lost their lives at sea. And this is a bit of park art that seems far more elegant than simply park art. It's a pretty building. Unfortunately, I have to kind of view it down here in the protection of the trees and the blowing blustery day. Just before this bridge was built, the city fathers had determined that they could not, or at least their engineers, could not build a bridge across this river. It was too long a span. But Adam Clark of Britain said he could, and he ultimately built what's called the chain bridge, which you can see from the use of what look like chains. I'm not sure they in fact are that, but they are linked, as you can see. He ultimately married a Hungarian woman and lived here for the rest of his life, but part of the myth goes that these lions were created by him, and he made a challenge that if anyone could find any defect in these lions, he would commit suicide. For what reason that much drama was required, I don't know, but it is a myth, perhaps, or a legend. Anyway, no one could just find any defect until a small child said, "There is no tongue in the mouth of the lion." So whether that's true or not, I don't know. You can't climb up there and see. But at any rate, we'll go to the other side. Here's a close-up view. Whether these are really nuts and bolts, I don't know, although they look like it, and it looks like it's threaded right here. So it may be possible. And inside the top of these central towers, I'm sure the links are connected, but notice that there is a gap in the links to allow any kind of play that may exist on this bridge. I have my ticket without any line. On such a day, you can well imagine, to go up this escalator, or whatever we call them, funicular. I've been up one in many places in the world. It's just one more. It's always fun to do. It's a funky little funicular car. Relatively new, but in the old style, with probably the original old fixtures. I think this is some kind of exhibit on the cable that's used. We are about to leave. Yes, we are. These things operate, I think, on gravity. The cable is one continuous line between both of the cars, the one going up, the one going down. As the one goes down, it pulls the other one up, probably with some kind of assistance to get it all going. But it's always fun to use these. There we're looking back at St. Stephen Basilica. The halfway point that we reached yesterday when we walked up the mountain, if you will. It's only about 53 meters high, I think, 150 feet or something. And it's only a 45-second long trip to the top for 1,000 forint. But with most things in life, it's not the cost in dollars, it's the experience. And we're now at the top, somewhat sheltered from the wind and the rain for a moment at least. This is not an eagle, it's a mythical bird that apparently was centerpiece in a dream that a young girl had around 1100 AD when she awoke, having believed that she had had sex with this bird. And from that came a king. Now exactly how in the sequence I don't recall, but it ultimately ended up being King Stephen, or now Saint Stephen. Remember, the Catholics never miss an opportunity to usurp a piece of history and convert it into Catholic myth. This is a monument to the man who, I think, kicked the Mongols out of Hungary, and I think about the 14th century. These are a couple of his captives. And as Steve pointed out, notice the negroid features, apparently, of that person. This statue, of course, proudly before what I think was once the Royal Palace, but now is both an art gallery, the National Art Gallery, and I think the Museum of History. I think. Don't know if I took this shot yesterday, but I'll take it again. There, the Basilica. What you saw to the left is the Parliament building. And of course, that was the same bridge, and there was the newer design bridge with a couple, if not 3 or 4 or 5 churches down there on the horizon on the Pest side. And there, our Monument to Liberty. An interesting statue of a woman holding what looks to be an apple or an orange and reaching out perhaps over a wall or over a stream bed. Here on the back side, a very dramatic sculpture. It looks like a man in a forest with, I think he's got a crossbow. Those look like bloodhounds. That hunter has a fairly interesting pair of trousers on, if in fact he has anything other than a G-string on. Here's a statue of a dramatic horseman and horse. Horse needing to be controlled. Another water-based statue. Looks like 3 boys with a net fighting with the large fish that they've captured. Inside these little buildings are a couple of soldiers who perform the protection ritual every hour for this presidential palace. And they come out and they change on the quarter hour, I think, or half hour. These remains are of the Middle Ages palace that was here apparently, but also it may go back to the early part of the Middle Ages, like the 11th century, but not much to look at really. Again, part of the old defenses. How far back they go, what they look like, there's no indication here of that. Here a little bit of a respite from the wind and the rain. I'll just pan directly away from the river. It's behind me. And while the castle was protective in the early second millennium, certainly when cannon became of substantial size, it was no longer safe from those hills. I don't know if these buildings to my right are apartment units or residential units at least, but if so, it's a pretty location if you can drive up here and park. It'd be a lovely place to live, I think, although not quite the same views as you'd have looking at Pest across the river. This lovely water fountain we looked at yesterday, I think, and I wondered at the time if the top part represented a Ottoman turban. This looks like it's all made out of marble except for the brass middle portion, or if that could be a lotus leaf. I don't think it's a lotus leaf because those are bifurcated petals, if you will. I do recall seeing that pretty little church. Here another mark of a city that relies and places a value on tourism, which you often don't see in the Eastern Europe countries. These are residences along this beautiful walkway, the edge of the castle peak, if you will. And these just one level further down the hill represent some very fine lifestyles, I'm sure. On a summer's day, this must be a pretty place to interrupt your walk with a coffee. Benches placed all along for the weary or the contemplative. Okay, here's a map of the castle hill, if you will. And we started off somewhere up over there, I think, and walked along through here. Here's where the ruins are, and there is a little bridge I crossed over, went to the bathroom right down there, at a toilet, and then came back up around here, walked across this bridge, and all the way down through here until we're now at this point. And notice the WCs, which are nice to know they're about. Sun trying to come out. Take a closer look at that old building in a few minutes when I walk around the outside and notice the corner on the walkway I was following earlier. Some protective cannon. This church may be left like this, and it may be evidence of bullet holes or not from the time, I think, either the revolution, the Hungarian Revolution, or when the communists were trying to kick out the Nazis. And here the Catholic Church, no doubt, trying to tell us some myth that supports their fantasies. Although that cross is curious, being a double horizontal bar on it. We need to focus a bit on that roof because the material used there, we'll see in a few moments when we get to Matthias Church. But apparently that tile work is made, the tiles, in Hungary, and is very special and has a protected formula. So whenever it's seen elsewhere in Europe, this is where it came from. So we'll go up a little bit closer to it. And still closer. So that building is the Museum of Military History, this being a carriage for a cannon. Whether it was a carriage for those cannons that we saw earlier or not, I don't know. This looks like some kind of shooting canister where you could come up from the ground inside of that and see and or shoot out those portals. These older howitzers were used as cannonballs, but often early on, like in Albania in the old period, they were used as catapult balls. Some kind of big gun that shot shells, but what's interesting to imagine is what the cause and circumstances were of these gouges. That one there, the one on the side, this chunk that's broken off here. Here, this part where the gear work is broken away, although it's not very substantial, as you can see. See, on this monument, whatever it is, has the same kind of turban, if you will, on top as we saw in that water fountain, whatever that means. We must now be at the back of that building with the pretty tile roof that we looked at briefly. We'll keep walking around this end of the castle hill. Kind of fun to get a look at this older kind of construction and architecture, whatever it is. To be a gate in a wall, and maybe there was a wall all the way around this castle mountain or hill, if you will, probably right where we were walking, but converted into that pedestrian area now. It's a statue of Buda. My guess is a heroic symbol of this side of Budapest. I think the rain has shifted direction and now it's coming into my face from the other direction. Just in case I don't get up here again, I wanted to get this pretty little set piece of older building. Here, a little bit closer look at the detail of the painting of some of these older buildings. This one in particular because it is detailed. Most of them are just swatches of color. This is interesting that all along this little patch of asphalt sidewalk are apparently people's names that are put in there in a script in brass. You wonder who they are and why they're here. It may have something to do with this building, but I can't tell. More of this older building, but now the front, instead of being brick, is with probably a veneer of worked stone or cement. That bus driver graciously slowed down a little bit when he saw me taking my video, so I quickly stopped and waved to him. He waved back. Here another strip of buildings that may, while not dramatic and not terribly old probably, at least represent something from the past, maybe Austro-Hungarian. This is Matthias Church. It has a Catholic name, but according to our guide yesterday, nobody in Budapest would know what it was. And here we'll take a closer look at our special tiles. It's raining still, so I have to look out for water getting on them. Some tourists entertaining themselves and the rest of us. It's good to see people having a good time. And then this is Fisherman's Bastion down here below. We'll get a closer look at that in a few minutes. One of the curiosities that the guide did not point out, was this large raven statue. About 5 times bigger than a regular raven, because one flew up on a nearby steeple yesterday and I could see the difference. There has to be a reason for it. Back inside the museum, on the side of the museum actually, are remnants of some older structure incorporated right into the building of the new one, which is smart. I've seen that before, of course, in Rome most pronouncedly. And here are more examples of the same. I think from the round configuration we're looking at, that would have been the nave. We're standing in the middle of a church. There are tombs, crypts if you will. Now below the Fisherman's Bastion, I noticed this grill work here, and I'm reminded of the fact that underneath this castle apparently is an entire warren of tunnels that apparently were natural but were used for, in the Second World War, a hospital. And they continued to use it after that. And other pretty churches I worked my way back to, the Chain Bridge. This is the restaurant I ate in. It's a very nice restaurant. What I had for lunch was a soup and a dish that's composed of layers of potato. Inside those layers are layers of hard-boiled eggs that have been sliced, and maybe even some cheese. There's some kind of hard sausage in there. And then there's some kind of sauce or fluid that ties it all together. And it's very tasty, very good. Old photographs in the restaurant. Like a celebration for soldiers given by the priests, the nuns. And this is the name of the restaurant. Well, this formerly pretty arcade is now the place where the homeless will come to sleep. If they do this in the daytime, sure, it's probably filled up in the evening. This is the Kosice train station for not only local trains but international. So I came in here. My hostel is about 2 major blocks down, a little bit more than 2 major blocks right straight ahead. The bus on that side of the street, 5, 7, 7A, and a bunch of others. And when I leave, I can just haul up here and go to Ljubljana from the same. The inside of the station, classic European railroad design. Show you how confusing it can be. This car is labeled 349. The window is 393, and that's what the ticket says. But you can't see that from the outside easily. At least I didn't look closely. It's a relatively new car, and I think on this train there is also a food car. But this is interesting. I go to one town on this train, And then I have a ticket for a bus that takes me to Kosice. I think that's because of the work that's being done on the train system. There's the tracks. Now we're pulling out of the station in Budapest for Kosice, which will involve a train ride and then a bus ride, all included, I think, in the ticket. And the reason for the bus ride is that they're working on the tracks, I believe. And this little trip should be somewhere between 5 and 7 days, and then bring me back to Budapest, where I'll stay for several days, and then move on to Ljubljana in Slovenia. Saying that this is a large sports complex, that being perhaps the soccer arena, and that being something else, situated by some beautiful poppies, I believe, but none of the usual junk and refuse that you often see. Notice you don't hear the clickety-clack that traditionally you would hear on a train, because all the joints are welded and filed down. This looks like a decent-sized park of some sort. It's curious what those lines are for, why those are like that. It can't be just a park, it looks more like a parking lot. Like they planned for some kind of rapid transit park. It appears that relatively quickly we're out in the countryside. It's a drill, I'll be damned. We're going up towards Miskolc, and we'll stop there, and from there we'll get on a bus and go to Kosice, almost due north. And then from there on, we'll go due north up to Bardejov. Okay, so to give you a story, I got off the train, off the bus actually, from Budapest. We had to switch from train to bus in Kosice. Immediately went into the train station, immediately got a ticket that was leaving in minutes, literally jumped on the train just before it took off, and then realized, which is no big deal, that I've got 3 changes to make from Kosice in another, 43, so less than half an hour, maybe 20 minutes. I get off the train at the first stop, Kosice, and then or Kisak, and then get on a train within a few minutes, like 8 or 9, whatever that is, and go to Prešov, get off, and then jump on a bus or a train going to Bardejov, which hopefully will give me almost an hour of riding on the train uninterrupted. Here I haul ass quickly to get to this train, which is my next train. That's where we're going. And this is a brand new train, it looks like. Everything looks brand new and spiffy. And I think it's double-decker. If we look up there. I'll go on up into the bathroom up here. Some more abandoned communism. This is a pretty little valley as we work our way to Prešov. hope that people get to do a lot of hiking up there. A young couple I spoke with told me that he didn't know for sure what the major industries were because he's in computers, but he does know that we have a big U.S. steel plant here and that we make Kia and other kinds of cars here. As well as yourself. Down there on the underground, it says these stairs lead to track 2. When you get up here, there's track number 3, track number 7. If you turn around and take a look, you'll see it says track number 7, track number 3. Here is 1 and 4. Still no 2. And over there, closest to the station, is number 9. Now this should be mine. And it should be number 2, but it's number 7. But that is the right train. So you make enough mistakes on your own that stupid stuff like this, or irrational stuff, inscrutable, is what gets really horribly frustrating. This is a much older train than the last train I was on. Interesting baggage holders here. And there's some high school girls from Slovakia going somewhere. Very good. Little mountain village.